welcome back everybody. Welcome to the 15th of March meeting for the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee. A little bit of a special one today, slightly out of our usual rhythm, but here we are nevertheless. We obviously all saw each other earlier this morning, so welcome back. So just turning then to our agenda, apologies. We have obviously a standing leave of absence from Councillor Barnes, and we also have apologies noted here for Councillor Webber and Councillor Coles. So that being the case,
I'll move they be accepted.
Thank you, Roger. I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Claire is happy to second that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Wonderful, thank you for that. Moving on then to disclosure of any members' interests. Do we have any today? I'm not aware of there being any. Nope. Brilliant. Skipping along then to late items. I don't believe that there are any late items either. No. Excellent. Fantastic. So then just to the confirmation of the order of meeting, under the understanding that there's not much to change, so I'm assuming it is all as it appears in our agenda. Andrew's happy to move that. Mike seconding. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Wonderful. So that means then we move on to the confirmation of minutes from our previous meeting. And this item appears at page 6 of our agenda. I've been through the minutes there and I couldn't pick up any changes, but I'll just note the pages. And Claire, you've got your hand up. Claire.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to raise about under item 6, the Community Services quarterly report, which is on page 8 of our agenda, yes, or page 2 of the, yeah. And the last paragraph there about Lake Naroto, I wouldn't agree that a discussion was had around the continued improvement. I thought it was the disastrous economic consequences that we were witnessing. I know that we talked about afterwards that there had been a lot of the work had been undertaken, but the reason it was raised was not because of the improvements, but because of the adverse outcome.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair characterisation, I believe, of that discussion. I think you're right, Claire. It was more about the ecological challenges out there rather than stressing the continued improvement, for sure. I think we probably did touch on works that have been undertaken to try and address those things, but I think you're right. To characterise the discussion as being around the continued improvement of Lake Naroto might be a long bow to draw. So yeah. Are we able to just change that wording? Have you a suggestion there, Claire?
Well, I liked your wording of ecological challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a discussion was had around the ecological challenges of Lake Naroto.
Yeah.
It was suggested that information, yeah. Okay. Are we all comfortable with that being a better reflection of what that discussion was? Great. Okay, then we'll move on to page 3 of that agenda of those minutes, our page 9 and 10. 11 and 12 and 13. Okay, that being the only change, which I think is appropriate in the circumstances, we obviously there have a recommendation that that those minutes be taken as read as true and correct. Roger's going to move that for us. Claire, you're nodding. You're happy to second it? Wonderful. Yes. All those in favour then please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Wonderful. Moving on then to our substantive item today, which is the approval of the draft annual plan 22-23 and the consultation document for public consultation. I believe Haven, good afternoon. Nice to see you. This is your baby. Take it away.
Thank you, Susan, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the purpose of this report is to seek adoption of the draft annual plan and that consultation document for public consultation. That consultation period would be from 18th of March, so that's this Friday, out until the 20th of April, so just over one month. And to provide a bit more context of how we got to this point, you'll recall that we came to elected members last year, where we looked to agree an approach to preparing this annual plan. And in that, we recognised that we'd just gone through that rigorous process of approving a long-term plan just a few months prior, and we didn't really want to stray too far from what we had put all the work into agreeing and approving in that. So with that in mind, when we went out to the organisation, the managers and the budget holders, we asked them to review their budgets, but not look to put any new projects in to the annual plan that weren't already there in the long-term plan. So over the next few months, the budget holders and managers did do that. And then we came back again to elected members in the new year, in this year, 2022, with a preliminary annual plan. And that landed really closely with year 2 of the long-term plan. There wasn't very much different at all. And with that, we had that initial recommendation where we would just engage with the community, because there was nothing significantly different from the LTP. From there, we continued to refine budgets. We were applying all the advice we got from our usual financial advisors in terms of interest rates, inflation rates, the wider economic environment, and continuing to look at our own internal budgets. A few things did emerge after that, and you'll be familiar with those, with the Waka Kotahi funding reduction. So we didn't get that share of funding for our urban mobility program. There was the issue with recycling contamination, and then the contract issue with that. And then there was the Naroto Pirongia TA cycleway delays. So just not progressing as fast because we didn't get those landowner agreements underway as fast as anticipated. We've also spoken about the general inflationary pressures that we've all been experiencing, especially over the last couple of months, and those did become more evident. However, we've talked with EMs about how some of those cost pressures have been managed, and we've presented that updated annual plan again since all that. And the follow-up to that was that now we recommended that we would consult, mostly to get the community's feedback on those 3 main issues, and just starting to signal some of that inflationary pressures, not really asking a question, but just highlighting it in things like the Mayor's foreword, just so that it's getting out there in the community. We understand it's happening, and if we need to continue that conversation, it's out there and been started. We also recognised we hadn't, over the last sort of 8-9 months, hadn't really had an opportunity to connect with our community in a very robust way. Just with COVID, we haven't been able to get there. So we thought it was a good opportunity to go to a full consultation and generate that consultation document that you've got attached to this report. So that's where we're at. Those issues are covered off in the consultation document. I will hand over to Hannah shortly to speak a bit more about that consultation period or that phase. But first, I just want to cover off the development contributions policy, which is appended as attachment 3 to the report. In there, it's just presenting some minor wording changes to align the DC policy with the LGA in terms of how things are assessed. And it's also got that updated fee schedule that reflect actual costs and the latest estimated costs. So the legal advice with that DC policy is we don't need to consult on it. So it's not actually in the consultation document. However, we have had that targeted stakeholder engagement with the development community, and we'll package up the feedback we get from that, which is still coming in, alongside the feedback we get through this consultation period over the next month, and bring it back to you together. So with that, I will just check, have we got Hannah here to potentially speak a little more around the consultation period?
Yes, we do have, but just 1 minute. We've got Claire with a hand up there.
Oh,
yes,
right.
Hayden, I'd appreciate having a chat with you about that development contribution policy, given that there is an exception, so I'm surprised you got legal advice that it's okay to increase the Ngāhupuri one beyond the PPI or whatever. I mean, usually when we've had audit looking at things like this, if there's an exception, it doesn't meet the criteria, and therefore I would imagine you would need to consult. So is there a special case for Ngāhupuri?
We've actually got Richard here, and I think we do have Tony here as well. So I might just quickly ask one of them to jump in and see if we can cover off Claire's question there.
I see Richard there.
Yeah, I can cover that off. So Nahinapuri, that's targeted DC will only affect 2 parties that are responsible for Nahinapuri's growth cells. So they will already be entering into a development agreement under those 2 sort of provisions. So the risk of that PPI increase is quite low because you've got the targeted stakeholder engagement when they're ready to activate. And that's through those 2 agreements that will be necessary.
Okay, so because of that, we don't have to worry about it breaching the general DC policy. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Thanks for that reassurance.
Thanks, Tony. So, Haven, you're just winding up there. Were you about to pass over to Hannah? She is there to address the issues in terms of the community engagement. Good afternoon, Hannah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So as Haven said, we're going live with a consultation on the 18th of March, and that will go through to the 20th of April. Within that, we're doing all the normal rounds that we would of advertising, printed copies of the consultation document at our counters and libraries, information all on the website, submission form. Something we're doing a bit different this year is we're doing the webinar series. As Haven alluded to, it's been more challenging to connect with our communities face-to-face due to COVID protocols. So we have brought in this webinar series so that we can make sure our community has a voice across the annual plan and be able to connect with you, our councillors. So we have that series that will run right across the district, including one specifically for business and also for the rural and farming sector as well. So far, that's actually had quite good feedback along on that idea, so we're quite excited about that one. So on top of that, we have looked into public and community meetings. However, due to COVID protocols, very few public meetings are being held, and if they are, not a lot of them would like external visitors. So there is just a couple of those that we will be attending, but we're happy to hear from the public if they have any other ones for you to attend. On top of that, we'll be utilising our social channels. We've created some collateral, which includes the annual plan in a nutshell, just to give people an idea, a nice and quick in-depth look of how an annual plan comes around, and also a breakdown of what you get per $100 of your rates as an infographic, and that is across the rural, community, lifestylers and urban as well. And of course, with some of the issues that have been raised in the consultation document, we are looking at further education around those, especially around recycling and the contamination issues that we've been having with that.
Right, thanks, Hannah. I see, Mike, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Just page 29, on the changes from the 10-year plan 2021 to 31, the first bullet point under expenditure, it reads increase of $235,000 for council and committees due to additional honorarium for councillors and increase in overheads. Yeah, I just like a little bit more explanation of. I was reading it from the public, and I see a whole lot more money going to councillors is how I read that. So just a little bit of explanation around that statement, please.
Yeah, no, Mike, I've asked Kirsty if she'd be able to provide us with an explanation around that one. Kirsty, have you got something you can clarify?
So through you, Madam Chair, I've asked Jo to be able to respond to that query, and Jo is online.
Thanks.
Jo, there you are. Hi, Jo.
I am. I'll just need a little bit of time to dig out the detail on that question. I've only just had it posed, so okay. I'll have to get back to you. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that later on then. But
yeah,
I raised that a little earlier today. I probably should have gone to it a bit earlier than now, but myself is saying I did too, Mike. So we'll come back to you on that one, Jo. You're happy to park that up, Mike, just now. We'll revisit it later. Perfect. Excellent. So Hannah, you had finished your discussion around it. So does anybody have any questions for Hannah in particular in respect of the consultation plans and comms around this? Marcus?
Yeah, the detailed information is really good, but I'm just wondering about the formatting of it. The draft consultation document, like it's quite wordy, and I'm just wondering if there's any way we can sort of break that up a little bit and make it a little bit more easy to get snippets from. And also like the draft annual plan as well, like it reads like a council report. There's nothing in there that sort of, the highlights that, what we do bits are actually quite important, full of good information. It'd be quite good if we could somehow like just highlight those up and bring them up a bit to make them make the document easier to read.
I'll definitely take that on board. Thanks, Marcus.
I'll just like to add, it's probably in more relation to the extra documents, the annual plan collateral documents that you circulated to us. The one that was a breakdown in terms of, if you live in a residential house, what $100 gets you, and if you live rurally, and if you live in a lifestyle block. I found that really helpful because I do think that a lot of our discussions at council tend to suppose that you are a resident living in an urban dwelling, and very often, if you are not in that sort of stereotypical arrangement, our discussions tend to miss how these things affect you. So I think that's a really valuable way of presenting it and making it relevant to a much broader section of our community. So I think that's a great development. So well done, team, on that front. Claire, you've got your hand up. Claire, you're on mute if you're talking to us. Oh.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm flicking between screens, so sorry about that.
Is the reception not good on Mars?
Yeah, had to make some concessions for outer space. I do like the tone and the design of the consultation document, but I agree that it's a bit wordy. Yeah, I also am looking on the page about let's talk rates, and the first column at the bottom, it talks about growth cell developments in two places in that paragraph, and really I do think that's council speak for new developments, or new subdivisions or something. And I thought it'd be more appropriate to have that kind of wording. And I also noted that I think on the page, which is the Let's Talk 2022-2023 changes, firstly, there's Lake Ngāroto in the first dark blue box doesn't have a macron on it. But the last paragraph above the urban mobility is a very long sentence. That whole paragraph is one sentence, and I think it would be better to break it down into smaller sentences. So obviously very minor formatting things, and just to say that I really like the dollars and cents, that breaking it down into what $100 gets you. I thought that was really great. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire. So are you able to just sort of wordsmith those little bits so they're a little bit less cumbersome? That's excellent. Thanks for picking those up, Claire. Now, does anybody else have any other questions for either Haven or Hannah in respect of either the annual plan, the draft annual plan, or the consultation document? Claire, you've got your hand up again, or have you not worked it down from before?
No, I do actually have quite a few questions, and I'm really sorry I didn't have time to send them through.
No,
firstly, I'm looking on page 26 of our agenda, which is what has changed from the long-term plan. And firstly, there's a lot of references to Lake Ngāroto in there, and they're missing that macron, but also it mentions the recycling contamination. Now, I understood from our previous discussions that we were actually going to put in the annual plan that we were open to different approaches to that, and that we were looking for feedback from the community. Now, that is covered in the consultation document, but it's not in the annual plan document. So would it be possible to put it in the annual plan document? I guess you're assuming no one's going to read the full document.
I think there's still there's scope to make that change in the annual plan document as well, to line it up with the consultation document. Just on this, we do have that resolution in there to delegate minor editorial amendments, I think, to Deputy Chief Executive. So I'm hoping these can all be captured within that.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And then on page 29, about the changes from the long-term plan, and it's already been highlighted by Mike about giving more detail around that $235,000 for council and committees. but I'm not sure why the extra $700,000 for staff salaries hasn't been listed there. And that is
listed in a different section, Claire. I think you'll find. I had
oh,
that.
right. Oh, right. Yes,
and
yes,
that's another one I've
yeah.
asked Kirsty to be able to answer. Gosh, here it is on page 61, page 39 of the actual document.
Well, I guess when I'm right, and I picked it up there, but I guess I expected that kind of information to be all summarised in one place as well. Yeah, and I thought that the size of it would justify it being, you know, a sort of a separate one-page summary, which I think we've had in the past. Yeah. Obviously, oh well, that's okay. I'm happy for it not to be, if you see it's too big a change. Yeah.
I think Claire, looking at it, because you've between you and Mike, you've highlighted the two things that I put red boxes around, and felt that they are things that we'd probably as you know, we know because we're elected members and party to a lot of the work, you know, working this up, what this is all about. But I think if you're talking about expecting a resident to pick up the document and read, you might be left a lot, less clearer. So I think there probably is room for improvement there in terms of explaining and perhaps being a bit more upfront about it, because it does have a feeling of it being quite, not so much hidden. I don't think there's anything sinister in it, but it's more a case of it not being particularly well explained, which actually be better done. Is that kind of what you are thinking?
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I do feel that it was missing. I guess it's also what Marcus was picking up. It's kind of like a council document. It's not really focused on really directive communicating, you know, with the general public, you know, what are the main points. Now, I guess you might say, well, that's what the consultation document's meant to deliver on. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I do have a couple of other questions.
You go, Claire, and I've got Roger after you.
Yeah, okay. So on page 32 of the agenda, or page 10 of the annual plan, the grants to community organisations, it looks like the Waikato Biodiversity Forum grant's been dropped, even though it was budgeted in there. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not across that one, Claire, but the issue that I have has been raised to my attention on that same one is that we've got the extra, we've got those 3 zeros there, so it can be implied that the grants are a lot more than they actually are, so we'd be looking to amend that. But in terms of your query around that specific grant, I'm not sure if anyone else in this meeting is able to speak to that at the moment.
Ken, are you able to?
Yep. Is that why your hand is up?
No, I've got a much more general comment. Look, sorry, in terms of the Waikato Biodiversity Forum, sorry, I can't help with that. I'm not sure why that grant has been removed. I mean, obviously, we've been very transparent about the removal of that grant, but I don't know the background to that one. I'm sorry.
Well, could we have a sort of some information on that? I'm not sure if the Biodiversity Forum has changed its structure and perhaps they're not seeking funding, but I thought it was an annual grant that they were expecting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would think so too, Claire, because I know that they do presented to us quite regularly over the years about their activities and are grateful for that support. Is there somebody, Ken, do you know somebody who might be able to get to the bottom of that for us, and we'll come back to that again at the conclusion of these discussions? Is that possible, please?
Yes, yeah, we can. Actually, I'm just not even sure. Sorry, who's the best person on that? It's possibly Sally Sheedy, and I know she's not available. Kirsty, can you think who might be best to answer that question?
It would have been Sally or Deborah, and neither of them are available. Look,
I'll contact Brad Ward, Madam
that
Chair.
would be the next best person.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Gary.
Okay.
We'll come back to that if we can. And so, Claire, did you want to carry on with some of your other points?
Yes, that'd be great. So I'm moving in on the additional staff salaries now, which are listed on page 63 of our agenda, or page 41 of the annual report, annual plan. So this is the funding impact statement, which demonstrates where the funds are coming from to meet that extra cost. And it appears that it's coming from a decrease in reserves, which I think is really unusual for salary payments. I'd expect it to come from rates. But rates are only increasing, a variance of 3.
Okay, I think Ken has an answer to that one.
Yes, I can certainly help with that one. So in regard to coming from reserves, yeah, what that is referring to is a big chunk of that is effectively coming from cash surplus from prior years, which is a reserve. So yes, that's the funding mechanism, surplus being carried through from the current year into the annual plan year.
And that explains why Gary was able to say to us that that restructure was able to be put in place without impacting rates. Yeah. So that's good to know that. And then I have the next page. I think that's 66 or page 44 of the annual plan. So if you look at equity, okay, you can see that the variance in the bottom half, on that bottom half of the cell, doesn't match the variance in the top, which normally does match. And in fact, I calculated the difference between the second and the third columns, and the variance is $49,000 for retained earnings as a negative, and a positive for the next line of $33,000. So I don't think it adds up.
Okay, yeah, so just responding through the chair, I mean, yeah, I agree, that looks like an error. I'm just looking at that right now, and yeah, those figures don't match. We will have to correct that.
The good news is, Ken, it's correct in the next in the other charts over the page, but for some reason it's not correct there.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And then yeah.
Okay. Yep, you go.
And then lastly, on page 102, again, there's a little typo in the rates payable by instalments. So that's on, what's that, page 80 of the annual plan. And it's the top chart for the rates payable by instalments. And it's the last line, installment 4, it says it's due in 22nd of May, 2022, but it should be 2023.
Absolutely correct. That's an obvious error that needs correcting. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's me.
Well done. Well spotted, Claire. That's awesome. Now, Roger.
Yes, Claire's as thorough as ever. Well done. Yeah. I sent some feedback through, and it's been raised again now, upon what level do we set where a variance becomes material? Because it was raised just a few moments ago that it is unlikely that our ratepayers will actually resort to reading through the annual plan in its form, and we rely upon the communication by the consultation document that's out there. And the question I raised was how many of our material variances actually should be in there. The 3 that we've asked for consultation on, to my mind, are the ones we do want feedback on those, but they're quite nice, in inverted commas, variations. You know, I mean, it's easy to see and explain. And when we talk about the others that are in the document, the additional honorarium, strategic relationships, increase in salaries, those kind of things I would have thought are material, and therefore some mention in the consultation document perhaps would be advisable. That's the question.
Do you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please, Ken.
Yeah, I was sorry, I wasn't sure if you saw my hand or not. Yeah, so look, I guess, Councillor, it comes back to the purpose of the consultation document. So look, if you look at the actual annual plan document, the 84-page annual plan document, for each of our groups of activities, there is detailed financial information, and anything that is significant there in terms of a variance between year 2 of the LTP and the annual plan for that very same year, there is an explanation for those things. So that document, the draft and the plan document that you're looking to sign off today, is obviously going to be widely available to the public. They will have the explanations for any significant variance at all. Returning to the purpose of the consultation document, I guess the purpose of the consultation document, and bearing in mind that is a 4-page document rather than an 84-page document, the purpose of that is to, at a very high level, reassure the public that things are on track in regard to the the global numbers in terms of the headline number on rates. We in the LTP said that our average rates increase would be 4.4%. The consultation document is saying that the average for the annual plan will be 4.3%. So at that very high level, we're giving the reassurance that we're on track there. And then in that 4th page of the consultation document, I guess what we're doing is we're picking out 3 projects that we particularly think the public should know about, just due to the significant public interest in those particular items, or the nature of the change. Essentially we're seeking feedback on those things. So look, I mean, we could put a whole lot of explanations for significant variances in the consultation document, but I'd suggest that's not the intent of the legislation. The legislation is very much talking about that consultation document picking up on items of significant interest to the public, and using that document to shape the feedback that we receive on those matters of material interest to the public.
Can I come back to you on that one?
Yeah.
If I may. And I'll be interested to see what the increase of 235 for council and committees comes back and what answer is there. I would have thought that the community would have an interest if additional money had been paid to councillors. I'm sure there's a different reason for that. And I would suggest that if it's hidden somewhere in the annual plan document, then we may be held accountable for trying to hide something in the annual plan.
Yeah, I don't think it's being hidden at all, Roger. I think it's probably just not explained as comprehensively as it could be. Right, Ken?
Yeah, look, I think to be really direct in regard to that particular thing, Roger, the level of remuneration that is paid the councillors that we have, we as a council, you as councillors, and in fact the public has absolutely no ability to impact that, because under the legislative provisions, the remuneration of councillors is set by an independent authority, the remuneration authority, and like I say, we like the level of that remuneration or not, whether the public likes that level of remuneration or not, there is absolutely no ability to change that. So I mean, that would be an example of something that really limited point putting that in the consultation document, because there is actually nobody's got the ability to influence that other than the remuneration authority.
Yeah, and just quickly, without knowing or being able to remember the details, that was definitely the remuneration authority did increase the payments last time, although it didn't have much of an impact because we ended up with one extra councillor, if you might recall. So yeah, that's where, but I'm not sure on the overhead split and the direct costs to the councillors. But certainly I'd agree with Susan that, look, there's nothing hidden in the plan, but just to list the variances in our consultation document has, I suppose, the possibility of making it a really negative document in terms of people just looking for those changes and making submissions on that rather than the real feedback that we want. But it's all there in the document, and I know it's 84 pages, but that's not a huge document for people to look through if they've got a real interest, and then they can find out exactly what's going on rather than a summarised version that's likely to hit the papers with no detailed, I suppose, investigation or thought about what the reasons are.
Yeah. Are you comfortable with that, Roger?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the answer comes back on that later on.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. So does anybody else have any other questions or changes they think necessary? There's nothing out there. I can't see anybody with any raised hands. Did you have anything further you wanted to flesh out, Haven?
Yeah, I'll just speak a little bit about where to from here in terms of next steps. So provided we get the go ahead and we go out for consultation starting Friday, we'll package that all up. And I know during the long-term plan, it all kind of landed with you at the end. So the intention this time is, if we can, to kind of distribute that throughout the month, maybe bundle them all up and send it out each week, the submissions as they come in. That's what we're aiming to do this time around. And then we'd also, we'd get all the submissions summarised with the staff advice. Then we'd have hearings and deliberations as usual. We've got the 3rd of May booked for the first day, and we've got a second day booked on the 4th if needed. Then we'd bring back an updated annual plan to you at SP, or Strategic Planning and Policy Committee, in early June. And then we'd bring it back at the end of the month at the council meeting, seeking formal adoption of that plan. So I guess that just kind of rounds out what we'd be looking to do. I guess I do want to just check in with likes of Kirsty and Ken and see if there's anything else that you would like to add at this point or comment on, clarify.
No. Oh, Ken.
Yeah, look, can I just say, look, there has been some questions today on some of the explanations that we've got for some of the variances from the LGP. So hearing those questions and looking at some of those explanations, I think, look, what we will do is we will make use of the editorial license that you have given to staff. Just to revamp some of those explanations. So I'm thinking particularly of that one in the governance space that 2 or 3 of you have highlighted. As I look at that, I can see that explanation and perhaps some of the others are lacking a little. So we will use our like I say, our editorial license over the next day or two to fine tune those explanations, because it is important that those explanations are appropriate and factual.
Thanks, Ken. Now, Jo, you've appeared on our screen. Have you come up with a magic answer?
Well, it was just in terms of, I suppose, clarifying that point there. There's a significant portion of that sum that is actually down to overheads. And then there was some increase allowed for the honorarium, which we've had to take account for, and also just a little bit of extra for training, because it's a election year, so there've been all the extra costs that go with the induction in that year. So yes, most of it is overheads. 163.
Yeah, and I think through the chair, some of that, or a very substantial amount of that overhead, because we really haven't changed the overhead model at all. We've just rerun the numbers. A lot of that, I think, is in relation to some of our structuring changes in terms of where those community advisors, etc., sit, and what that has led to is a shift of overheads from one activity area to another. And I guess that's what I was referring to when I said we will use that editorial license, just to be a bit more specific about that. This is not a huge blowout of overheads. It is a shift of overheads, and there's a compensating saving in another activity's overheads. So look, we'll work through that over the next couple of days and fine tune those explanations.
So Ken, can you make sure that it is clear what the actual increase in the honorarium has been?
Yes.
Split the figure so that the public can see what the increase actually was.
Yeah, yes, Your Worship, we can certainly do that. Yeah, I mean, there was a point raised before that there is some sensitivity around the level of councillors' honorarium, despite what I said before about us having no ability to influence that. I appreciate there is sensitivity, so yes, happy to do that.
Yes, because it doesn't really matter who sets the honorarium; it still comes out of the ratepayer's pocket.
Correct, absolutely correct.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Ken. So, Joe, we've squared away your one. Have we heard anything back from Brad?
Madam Chair, no, I've heard nothing back from Brad at the moment. But perhaps if there's to be any change to the annual plan, i.e., we need to put the honorarium, or sorry, the grant back in there to the Waikato Biodiversity Forum. Ken, can you let me know how much is that? Is that grant? Any idea? You're on mute, Ken.
Whoops, actually, I think somebody may have centrally muted me. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Hey, so look in terms of that biodiversity grant, it is only $3,000. So it is a relatively insignificant amount in council terms. So obviously it's probably a lot of money for that particular organisation. So yeah, so look, let's bear in mind, I think that given where we're at in the timeframes, yeah, that disclosure may need to stay the same, but certainly this could be changed between now and June if for whatever reason we have to reinstate that grant. I mean, I would be very surprised if we had sort of randomly just taken that grant out. Yeah, I'm sure there is a good reason for removing that. If it turns out that reason isn't appropriate, it can be reinstated in June.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible way of dealing with it, Ken.
Yes, Ken, I for all of, and I have missed a couple of meetings, but I can't recall any discussion where that was pulled out for any reason. So I suspect that if it is out, it might be because they didn't want it, but otherwise it's an error. I can't recall any discussion that would have led to it being withdrawn.
Likewise, John. And obviously Claire agrees. I think it's a good way of moving forward on that one. So on the basis that we extend that that little bit of editorial license, so to speak, does that address everybody's concerns? I'm comfortable with it. Claire, you're nodding. Roger seems reasonably comfortable. Most people are nodding. Any other questions for Haven, Kirsty, or Ken or Hannah in respect of either of any of these documents? And there are no further things to add from staff on them. That being the case, we'll turn our minds then to a series of recommendations we have there appearing on page 15 of our agenda. Obviously, the first one's to receive the report. Second one's to approve the draft annual plan for consultation. The third one is to approve the annual plan consultation document. The fourth one is to receive the extracts from the draft amended development contribution policy, which was addressed by Haven earlier and clarified a little by Tony. Then we delegate the authority to the Deputy CE to be slightly poetic in terms of making any small editorial amendments as we've raised today. And then to finally approve the public consultation period from 8th of March to 20th of April and setting down hearings for submissions on the 3rd and 4th of May. So I have those recommendations from A to F. Ken, you've got your hand up. You're waving frantically at me. What have I done?
Sorry, Chair. I'm just looking at recommendation E, so subset E, and I noticed that editorial license that we're getting only appears to relate to the consultation document, but in fact, some of those changes that I was thinking we need to utilise that for are actually to the annual plan document itself. So Chair, I'm just wondering if we could broaden E to allow that minor editorial amendment to be to both documents, to both the annual plan itself, the draft annual plan itself, and the CD.
Good catch. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. So do you want to say required to finalise the minor editorial amendments required to finalise the draft annual plan 22-23 consultation document and the draft annual plan 2023?
Yes, yes, correct. That would suffice.
Madam Chair.
Pardon, Roger?
In the
Yes.
motion, I'd actually put those around the other way.
Other way round. Mention the draft annual plan first and the consultation
and
document
then the
second.
consultation document. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good catch. Well done, Ken. So on that basis, and there's some assuming that we will insert the reference to the draft annual plan after the word finalise the in paragraph E. Do I have somebody who's happy to move those recommendations from A to F? Roger's going to move them for me. Jim will second them. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Fantastic. So that then, oh, I've just been thrown out of diligent. It does this to me occasionally. I believe is the last and only item that we needed to address today. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring up my agenda. Fairly convinced that's the case. Yes, it is indeed.
It is.
Well, thank you, people. Thank you, team. Thanks, Kirsty and Haven and Hannah, Ken, and your teams. It's no easy task, especially in this environment where we're all stuck at home for the most part. It's pretty tricky for everybody. So